And you can pull that down when you're talking. I mean, fine with that.
It does help. Turn mine off, you can't hear my expressions.
Okay, we are live and good to go, so.
All right, welcome everyone. It's 6:07 and we'll start the working session now. Just to do a quick roll call of board members present. I'll call out your name and then maybe just say aye. Tim Lyon.
Aye.
Robin Sonstegard.
Aye.
Jeff Burcham.
Aye.
I didn't hear if you called me. I'm driving, so I'm breaking up a little.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you. Lynn Ellis. I'm here. And we'll start with the citizens forum. Any information, Jeff?
Not to my knowledge,
Okay.
no one's come forward.
Then we'll move on to the reports. And first up, we have the fiscal year 20 audit report. Mike Bailey.
I will see if Luke is on yet. Let me see here. Crystal, do we know what time that Luke was it going to be 6:15? Did we confirm the time or?
Yeah, he was thinking more like 6:15 because he had a different meeting before.
Okay, I have a missed call and voicemail, but I'm not sure if that's what it is. So we can just continue on and we'll watch for him to join us.
Sounds good. We'll just come back to him when that.
Yep.
When he joins. Okay. Next up is board committees, and first we have the policy committee. I guess I can maybe cover a couple things. You'll see on the agenda tonight the policies that we did cover, policy 405, 416, and 420. Those were all existing policies and they had fairly minor changes. And then the policy 535, service animals in schools, that is new completely, correct, Jeff?
Yes, that's new policy.
Okay, so those are what we covered. We did have one that we're gonna, we put on hold.
That was the one on staff development.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it's been a while since we met, so it was really good to get back on track.
Yep.
That's it. Anything else on the policy committee?
I don't have anything.
Next, we'll move on to the health and safety committee.
I think Robin was there. It was not a lot of items on there. It was a very short meeting, in fact. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember what. There's a few.
And I joined late, so I can't, I only caught the last few minutes, so I can't help you with much with what was covered.
I can go back and I can send out an email, but I don't remember anything drastic on the health and
Nothing
safety. There was nothing significant. It was the usual just report by Brian Bicklem from Northwest Service Co-op on any findings and stuff, and mostly just checking in with the different staff that are part of that committee and seeing if there's any concerns and stuff. So it was actually quite a quick meeting, so.
Okay. Then we have the school forest committee. I was the only board member on that. And we just met, it was a fairly short meeting, just, I guess, the promotions on the ski trails, we're gonna, those out, that'll be going out in the Ed Plus. And then we're We're gonna try to do a little promotion on the logging that was completed by Farrier Logging, and still hoping to hold the Candlelight Ski event in February, so we'll set a date in January, and we know a little bit more. And if anybody's really good on the timing of the moon and all that stuff, that's usually,
I have to Google it.
I know. So that was it for the school force committee. And then next up, we have the superintendent evaluation. And Tim?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm willing to launch into that. If you have a 6:50 time with ideally, I think we're going to run into that, but I'm going to give it a little more than just a minute or two here. I'll start. Feel free to interrupt. Jeff and board members Burcham and Sonstergaard and I met just about 5-6 days ago. Everybody got their packets in, which I appreciate. No real surprises. I mean, I'm not here to drop any bombshells and tell you that we didn't give them a good recommendation. Overall, it went quite well. We got more specific than that, giving you kind of an overview of that rating system. And this is also for the sake of the public, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and UA indicating that unable to answer. And I appreciate that, Jeff. You went through and did the averages, but we went through and did specific numbers for each question. And I won't be that detailed with it today, but just so everybody knows, and if you've got that evaluation sheet in front of you, and it is on the board packet, in section 1, Jeff had a 4.07 average rating on those 5 or 4 questions in that section. And I guess what I'm pointing out is that a 3, if somebody had put down a 3, they were indicating that the expectations we had for Jeff had been met. So anything above a 3, I think is a pat on the back, and anything higher than a 4, I think we start to get into rarefied air, at least from superintendents. He's done quite well on those situations. So as you look at your board packet, and each of those groupings had a specific theme to them, but in the first section, and I'll go a little more quickly now, but we ended up throwing an average of 4.07 on there. Obviously did quite well. Some of your math, Jeff, on the averages I thought were off, so I went back and redid a couple. So if they don't jive with what you have on the board packet, but like section 2, you had down as a 3.4. I think you just transcribed that differently, because I had it as a 4.3 on an average. So first 2 sections again, now get moving, but 4.07, section 2, 4.3 overall average on those 6 questions. Section 3, 3.88. Section 4, 3.57. Section 5, 3.8. Section 6, 4.4. Section 7, 3.9. Section 8, 3.4. Section 9, 3.5. And section 10, 3.43. So all of the sections, once again, we felt like you had, at least at the very minimal, done what we were expected to do. And obviously all of those were above that 3 level. The vast majority of answers for overall were 4s and 3s by all of us. We're a little bit on the high side of straddling the fence, so that's good. But I will point out that the last evaluation sheet we did had a total of 5 number 5s. In other words, the highest score you could get for all those questions. There were only 5 times that a board member felt that you had been a 5. This time around, there were 24 5s on there. So similar board, not the exact same, but similar to the last evaluation. And there was obviously a significant improvement on that end. And on the bottom end, last time you had 2 number 2s. This time you only had 1 number 2. So overall, from a numerical standpoint, I think we were quite pleased with your efforts. And we got more critical in certain areas. And as a result, started pointing you in a certain direction in terms of your strategic goals, your performance evaluation sheets, which are also attached there. And these sort of came along with some suggestions that were written in, and I won't go into each each of those comments, but there were some that we felt were important and needed to be addressed. And I think the board was in general agreement on most of them. There were a couple very specific areas that we tried to incorporate. And also, so you're aware of it, we tried to be somewhat anonymous, but quite honestly, with a 6-person board where Jeff knows everybody, you can tell by the tone of the comment who wrote the comment. So, I mean, if your name slips out of my mouth as I throw a couple of these comments out there, don't take it personally, but I think we're all aware of where some of that's coming from. Nothing was horribly critical, so appreciate that. But in terms of the overall strategic goals, I think as a board, we felt that it was important to keep going on the budget financial side of things. To the day Jeff retires, he'll always need to be improving. The business of school changes, the finances change, the people around you change. So always going to need that component in there. So rather than try to establish a new goal, we left the first one fairly similar. Robin, I'll let you chime in for a minute, but since you talk more knowledgeably on that than I do, but we talked as a group and said we'd like to see a little more in the way of detailed presentation each month at the board meeting, and we left sort of threw that into Jeff's lap, thinking two things: one, that he'll have to learn more if he has to throw detail at us, but also that the board, needed to be a little bit better apprised of what our situation was. Is that fair, Robin?
Yeah, I would say so. Just with a little more detail, maybe some more narrative on, variances or unexpected results month to month.
So in response to that, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I don't know if you want any more detail than that, but yeah, just basically a little bit more information to help round out the whole picture.
And that's something that Crystal, you and Jeff will have to get together on and sort of, get a feeling for what the board can digest, appropriately, what they can't, which is going to be, and we're all over the map in terms of our financial acumen. So we'll see what happens with it. But I think, Jeff, you have an idea where we want to go with that.
Crystal's already making strides in that area, so we're on the right track.
Jeff, do you want to welcome Luke now and take a break on this?
Should we welcome Luke, or do we want to finish up this and then have Luke do the audit report? I'll leave that up to Board Chair Trask.
How much more time do you need, Tim, to run through?
I'm thinking about 2 to 3 minutes. Is that fair?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's wrap this one up and
All
finish.
right, let's wrap this up. That'll be good. So you can see the changes highlighted in the strategic goals for Jeff, but basically trying to get a monthly board budget report that includes some detail that the board can figure out. I'll move on. A number of the suggestions, we all agreed on it, was that the superintendent should be out there in public. And once again, something that Jeff has said, I'm not always that good at, but I think has improved a lot. You can see the scores. But we continue to push on him to write articles, get out in public, be on the radio, and do things that sort of invest the community into our school board planning as well. So we left that on his strategic plan. And this one gets a little more confusing. It's hard to understand, but effectively we had some comments, a very specific comment about trying to hold the school accountable for the test scores. I think that there was a real concern that we always talk about our test scores struggling, but really we have educating kids. We've managed to, you guys have managed, not we, but you guys have managed to keep kids in school for through a very difficult year right now, and we're all impressed with that. I'd like to believe that if actually in-school learning improves grade scores, we should start to see that. So in an effort to hold Jeff's feet to the educational fire, we wrote in Jeff helped, or Jeff did write it in, but I'll quickly run it over, but the world's best workforce assessment data will be used to identify instructional and curricular deficiencies and will include a plan for intervention strategies and additional resources needed to improve student mastery of May or June. And a plan for improvement will be included in the world's best workforce plan that will be shared with the board in September or October. You guys know who wrote those comments and who didn't, but I hope that addresses your concerns there. If you'd like to comment on it now, you're more than welcome to. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody, so I'm moving on. And then part of the lower scores as we got into the final 3 chapters of that effort, but really had to do, there was as many unacceptables or unable to answers, UAs in there as there were 3s and 4s on those last couple of sections. And I think that we were not as a board understanding of what the superintendent's relationship with outside agencies really was all about. What was expected, what could be improved, how we could benefit as a school district. So we threw in there, and I don't mean to sound casual about it because I think we were a little bit confused, but the superintendent will establish and maintain good relationships with agencies and personnel outside the school district to promote the best interests of the school district through contact with legislators, superintendents, local government leaders, et cetera. And then the evidences of that and the which I won't read all the way through, but there's your notion again. We're just trying to get a better idea of what benefit there is to our school district for outside, and we will expect the superintendent to not only pursue it, but since he's the one doing it, to report back to us on how that works. So it may be more educational for the board than educational for anybody else than that strategic goal. Is that a fair assessment, Jeff?
Yep, I think
I'm asking Jeff first about this one because Jeff, you were the other person who we were looking for him to go to outside sources and see what he could bring back, so to speak.
No, I think that's a very accurate and fair. You did a good job. Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Jeff, I didn't mean to blow right through that. I don't want the ideally guy sitting, but a real top-notch evaluation if you're looking for ego stroking. So I hope that makes you feel good. But like we talked about at the meeting, my expectation of the next board is to be way more critical.
that's fine with me. My ego didn't grow too much because I realize it's more the team that I'm working with that brings me to success. So this reflects the people that I'm working with and includes the board and my leadership team. So, because a lot of these goals are overarching and part of the school district goals. And I have good people that I work with that keep the budget going and transportation and curriculum. So I think it's more of a reflection on them than on me in a lot of ways. So.
Okay, I do have copies at my house or upon request of anybody who wants to see the board's response in terms of that, more specifically. So anybody I'm talking, I think public has the right to look at that too. So, but any board member who might want to look back on it and see what other comments board members had made is more than welcome. I can bring them in anytime.
Okay.
Then we're going to, thank you, Jim, for that. We'll go back to the fiscal year 20 audit report from Bailey. We have Luke.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Very good. I'm going to try and do a screen share here.
And I just made you a co-host, Luke, so that you should be able to manipulate that, I hope.
Can you guys see the guy with the light bulb, the little boy?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
We're off to a good start then. Well, we appreciate you joining with me. For the audit presentation, my name is Luke Evenson. We'll be going through the fiscal year 2020 audit and the executive summary. I was a part of the audit team this year and have been here for the last, I believe we've been with you guys for 3 or 4 years now. We are happy to report the audit is finalized as of last week. We sent Crystal the final reports here today, and we'll be submitting them to the state here within the week. This year was, as you probably are aware, was a particularly tough year as far as the audits go. All of our audits were basically done remotely, like your guys's was. And so I do want to commend, district staff and especially Crystal. She probably put up with a lot of emails and phone calls from our group, asking for information and documentation, and she was, responsive and sending all that information back. So, we understand that Crystal probably has a little bit of stress related to the audit, but everything is done and finalized now. And I do want to say thank you to Crystal for sticking with us and sticking through that process, as our procedures really didn't change that much, but the communication was a lot different, as normally we're in person and on site for about a week, and this year that did not happen. So thank you to Crystal. But next I'll go through the executive summary. As part of the audit, we issue the executive summaries. We feel it's a better, more summarized information than the audited financials. So if we want to flip over to the audit results and then the audit opinion page, I have it up on the screen here, so you can follow along with me. The whole reason Eide Bailly is brought in is to give an audit opinion and whether or not the district's financial statements are materially accurate and fairly presented. Again, this year, the district received what we call an unmodified opinion. That is what we call a clean opinion, meaning just that the district's financial statements are reliable, they're not materially misstated, and they're fairly presented. This is the highest opinion that we can give as auditors. I do want to note that there was a new accounting standard that was brought on for all school districts this year. It was related to student activity funds. In past years, those have been a separate fund. They've been included on the district's financials, but not exactly under board control. Now with this new standard, those activity funds are brought into the general fund and are now under board control. So you'll see the activity revenues and expenditures included in the general fund now. So with the clean opinion, there were some items that we issued findings for. These are items that we found during the audit that we need to disclose to the users of the financial statements. But we felt that there's still some structure, and the financial statements are still materially accurate and they're not misrepresented in any way. But these are things that we can work on in the future. The first set of findings we had were financial statement findings, and they were segregation of duties, material audit adjustments, preparation of financial statements, and improper completion and retention of employee personnel forms. For number one, the segregation of duties, mainly that relates to the office staff for the district's finance staff not being large enough to properly segregate all accounting functions. So there's one person that records the receipts, and that same person can write checks, and that same person has access to the district's bank statements. Duties like that would be segregated and if there's no segregation of duty findings, those functions need to be segregated properly. And due to the number of people that work in the finance department, it's just, there's no way that we can do that with just a few people. We'd need to hire additional staff members in order to segregate all those functions. The second finding was material audit adjustments. Basically, because Eide Bailly is brought into audit, we did find some entries that needed to be made to make those financial statements materially accurate. So we need to disclose that fact and as the finding. Very similarly as the preparation of financial statements. We prepare the financials, so we need to disclose the fact that we do that. The fourth finding was related to improper completion or retention of employee personnel forms. As part of our testing, we traced to backup documentation like a form, it's called an I-9, where an employee fills out some information and signs the form. There were some missing I-9s when we tried to trace to backup documentation. Now, if these are lost or we can't find them, our recommendation would be let's go get a new one, because these should be kept on file for all employees. Again, these were just items. When we tested, there were only a couple of employees that had this situation, so not all employees. There were also some Minnesota legal compliance findings. These particularly relate to student activity funds. The rules for student activity funds are a little different. They're unique and they're a little more specialized. So we typically see more findings in our audits related to this area. The first one was a lack of proper authorization for an expenditure in the student activity fund. I believe we were missing a disbursement form or signature related that needed to be presented as far as an expenditure goes. There was an inactive student activity fund, and guidelines call for if there's inactive student activity funds, there needs to be a reason why that fund was inactive during the year. And there was funds remaining in a graduating class of a student activity. Typically, those funds need to be either all distributed out or spent before September 1st of the next fiscal year, because that graduating class, by the time September hits of the graduating class from 2020, a lot of those students are long gone, whether they're out working or out at college, and the graduated class still had a balance in their activity. So those balances need to be eliminated before September 1st of the next fiscal year. So with that, those were the findings related to the audit. Again, a clean audit opinion, but there were some items that we found as part of the audit that we needed to disclose to the users of the financial statements. On the next slides, we will show some more financial and numbers that came out of the audit. This is the part of the summary where we get into the current year, but also look at some historical figures too. So you can see some trends that are forming within the district as far as the financial condition of the district. So on slide 7, we have the cash and investment balances. And what this shows is what are the cash and investment holdings that the district has on June 30th for each of the last 10 years. So 2020 was the year that the audit was just completed for. You see $3,203,000 in cash and investments that the district held on June 30th. So what that represents is just the number on June 30th. So even if you look at July 1st or July 2nd, that number can change due to all the payments and the in and the out money funds that are received by the district. So this is just at one point in time. So that's something to keep in mind. And one of the things that really correlate to what the balances for cash and investments is the state aid payments and the structure of those payments. So if any of you are aware of the structure of those state aid payments, right now and in 2020, the state had what we call a 90-to-10 funding ratio, where 90% of the district's allocated state aid, which state aid is by far the largest pile of revenue, or the largest percentage of revenue that the district receives. That state aid is paid 90% during the fiscal year and 10% of it after that fiscal year end. And it's been this way since about 2014. Now, previously to 2014, the state operated on either like an 80-20 70-30 or even 60-40, where 60% of that revenue that's promised or allocated to the district is received during the year, and then 40% after that fiscal year. So you're still getting all of your allocated funding based on student numbers and other things like that, but it just can be a cash flow issue where you're not getting as much of that money up front. The state is withholding that until after that fiscal year. So you're still getting your money eventually, but what it did do is present cash flow issues for districts. Now, the reason I bring that up here is in 2020, we all know COVID hit. And in 2021, we haven't heard any definitive statements from anybody, but as far as where the Minnesota State Legislature is going and funding, if tax dollars aren't flowing into the state like they have in past years, well, there may have to be cuts in places. And, other superintendents have commented that they believe that school districts could be one of those places. Again, you're still going to get your money, but is that funding ratio going to be affected? Are you going to get 80% of your funding and then 20 after the fiscal year? So, maybe cash flow issues could be becoming a bit of an issue here in 2021 or 2022 for districts. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this presentation, as far as our cash numbers or even some of our fund balances that we'll go through here in a few pages. So with that being said, on slide 9, we do show what the ADM served. We simply show this because, we have all this historical data, and ADM served, or that average daily membership, is really a student head count of the the numbers of kids in the school. And that's what a lot of the state aid payments are based around, is what are your student numbers. So the more students you have, generally the more revenue you had. And like you all are aware of, generally the more expensive it is to run a school if the more students you have. So that's the reason we show this. In fiscal year 2020, that ADM served number was 468. So that leads me into slide number 10 here, where we show the budget to actual. Now, this is just for the general fund, as the general fund is where a large majority of the transactions for the district occurred. But what we show on this fund is the original and final budget. So what was approved by you guys, the actual figures, so the audited numbers, and then what those audited numbers are different compared to what our final budget is. So that's what the variance with the final budget column represents. So for 2020 in our general fund, we had 6.9 million, or right around $7 million in revenue. For the expenditures, we had, again, 6.9, or just south of 7 million. We did have a transfer out of the general fund of $174,188, and that transfer out of the general fund went directly to the community service fund. So we did have revenues above expenditures just in the general fund, but because we can make transfers into other and out of other funds for the district's financials, the community service fund did run a deficit in 2020, so we did need to transfer $174,000 out into that fund. So because of that transfer, we did have a net change in fund balance, or a decrease in fund balance, of about $75,000 for 2020, and our fund balance decreased to $1,875,556. So we will touch a little bit more on fund balances here in the next few pages, and more of what these amounts represent and how they can be determined. But on the next page, just a few basic things about fund balance and why having a positive fund balance can be a good thing. I'm not going to get into too much detail on this, but the thing that I want to really go through is item number 2, can produce investment income, but also maybe more pertaining to the districts here for future years is providing that working capital to meet cash flow needs. Like I said on previous slides, there are talks that funding ratios and allocations could be updated for future years, which could present future cash flow shortfalls. So having that cushion there in fund balance can really be a savior to, having you guys don't need to go out and borrow money or have aid anticipation notes or short-term loans in order to meet payroll or pay out some expenditures. So on slide number 12, we have what the changes in fund balances were. As you can see, we have there's several different categories of fund balance, from non-spendable to restricted fund balances. There's a committed fund balance, assigned, and finally that unassigned. The top two, the non-spendable and restricted, those are fund balances that the district doesn't have as much control over. The non-spendable are basically already spent. The restricted fund balances need to be spent in those specific restricted areas. Then the committed and assigned are really the fund balances that the district wants to set or just earmark dollars for. So we have a committed for severance, which the district has basically said, we're going to spend this on severance in the future. So we want to just pinpoint that in our fund balance amount. Similarly, with the assigned fund balance, management has made a decision to set aside these dollars to be spent for specific areas. But really that unassigned fund balance is our quote unquote rainy day fund, or those are our reserves that the district can spend on with how they see fit in the future. And the bottom three lines on this as well are the committed, assigned, and unassigned represent what we call unrestricted fund balance. That means the district has control of these dollars. So we really analyze that as well as the unassigned figure here in the next couple of slides. I did briefly touch on those fund balance categories and what they represent. I'm not going to go through these too much in detail, as I gave a brief overview of each one. So we'll flip to slide number 14, which is just a graphical representation of the district's fund balances in those specific categories, and they're stacked on top of each other to show that total level of fund balance. So as I talked about, a few slides ago, you guys were just around $1.8 million in total fund balance, and that unassigned category, which we like to look at, is at 1.2 million. So what do all these fund balance numbers really mean? We try to find a ratio that gives you some perspective on how you can read some of these numbers and develop an idea of what they mean. So we give some benchmarks on fund balance, and the main benchmark that we look at is your fund balance or your unrestricted fund balance in comparison to what you spend on an annual basis. So that's as a percentage. So the state auditor of Minnesota puts out a guide of where these fund balance percentages should be in comparison to what you spend on an annual basis. So they put out a number of 35 to 50%, which is in that top paragraph. Now we have that in there because it's the Minnesota State Auditor, but we really don't feel that number is a very accurate representation for school districts. Now that's for Minnesota governments, not exactly school districts, maybe more for counties or cities or whatever. But those types of entities receive money from the state as far as their local government aid on a 2 to 3 time a year basis, whereas school districts receive it from the state on a monthly basis. So you can see that the funding mechanism that those governments have is a little different than a school district. So the school district has their own policy, and from my overview, I think this policy is a pretty high goal, but is in line with what we see at other districts as well. And that district policy is 25%. So 25% of what we annually spend in the general fund, we want to see in our fund balance for the unassigned category. And for the current year, that target would be 1.7 million. Again, that fund balance is or that goal, that benchmark is probably on the higher side than from what we normally see at other districts. But then again, we have to sometimes take into consideration the size of the district. Some of the bigger districts can have a lower percentage because in terms of sheer dollars and what they spend on an annual basis, that's going to be a little bit more. So some of the districts that have smaller ADMs or smaller student counts might have to increase that percentage. But 25% is probably the highest or close to the highest that we typically see. So finally, after all this talk about benchmarks and whatnot, on the next slide number 16, we have what is our unrestricted and unassigned fund balance in comparison to what we spend in the general fund. So the blue is the unrestricted, which represents our unassigned, committed, and assigned. And then the green is just the unassigned portion. So for the unrestricted, that is in 2020 is 20%. So fiscal year 2020 is the far right bar, and the annual fiscal years, 2019 would be the next year after that, and going all the way back to the far left would be 2011. So for 2020, we did see that percentage for the unrestricted at 20%. And for the unassigned at 17.4%. So for every $100 that we spend in the district in a fiscal year, just in the general fund, we see $17.4 in our unassigned fund balance. And then that maroon line obviously is what our fund balance policy says, is to strive to maintain. And again, typically where we see most school districts, we analyze it on the unrestricted. So we include the committed and assigned portions and unassigned. So typically what we see is right around the 19.5 to about 21.6 is about the average that we see in our school districts. And we have a pretty good mix of, large and small schools. So you guys, funny as it is, fall right in that average of what we see for a lot of our school districts for that fund balance percentage. Now, we did a pretty deep dive on the general fund. The district does have some other funds included in the financial statements. We spend so much time in the general fund, as that's where a large majority of the dollars and the transactions occur. The district does have a community service fund, which, as you can probably guess, the community programs and community ed, ECFE, that's where a lot of those items are accounted for. We do have a graph here that basically shows what is the year-end fund balance in that community ed fund. Now for 2020, we did have, I believe I alluded to, there was a transfer in the community ed fund into the community ed fund from the general fund of $174,000. Now that was to alleviate expenditures that were over revenues by $168,000 in the community ed fund. So in 2020, we did have an ending fund balance that was just shy of $10,000, but a large portion of that was because $174,000 was transferred into this fund. Otherwise, without that transfer, we would have saw a large deficit, close to $168,000 if that transfer was not made. The next fund we do go over is for food service. Again, this accounts for, charges for meals, revenues like grants or federal dollars that are collected, as well as state dollars that are collected for meals to provide for the cost of those meals. And the food service fund had a balance at the end of the year of $2,035. So it was a positive fund balance. We had no transfers in, but we did have expenditures that were higher than our revenues by $7,816. But we had available fund balance in the food service fund to take on that loss, and we still had a positive fund balance at the end of the year of $2,035. And finally, on our last slide, we do show the debt service fund. Basically, what the debt service fund is it mainly collects property tax levies, also state revenues, and some revenues from other sources as well. But those are primarily the two largest ones. And they're collected to make sure that debt payments and debt obligations are met. So payment of those annual or semi-annual principal and interest amounts. And, what we like to see as auditors or just me as a finance person, like to see a positive fund balance in this fund, but as well as we don't want to see a decreasing trend. A decreasing trend would represent that the revenues we're collecting on an annual basis aren't enough to cover those debt payments. And you can run into trouble if you're getting low on your fund balance and you can't make debt payments on an annual basis. So we did see an increase in 2020, and it looks like we're at a pretty stable level here in this fund as far as, we do have some fund balance and we are able to meet those annual debt service obligations. So with that being said, that is the end of my formal executive summary presentation. If you guys do have any questions now, I'd love to take them.
I have a couple questions. You hear me? This is
Yep.
Tim Lyon. Okay. Number one, will the reassignment of where the activity fund gets ledgered solve some of those compliance issues, or are those things outside the purview of that?
That's a good question. None of the rules really change for the student activity compliance going forward. It's basically just a matter of where some of those dollars are housed. So no, none of the rules are going to change. It might make things a little bit more simpler to account for, as I believe in the past they had been in the same system but under a different district number, and it was not the easiest to account for. So that might be easier in the future, but none of the rules are really changing all of that much.
Okay, and as long as I got the podium, you had mentioned that a good positive fund balance can produce income. Give me an example of how that works.
Sure. So if the district has a positive fund balance, that means that we have some cash reserves on hand. And, a lot of times if we have cash reserves on hand that, we aren't spending at the moment, we can either invest some of those things in some low risk investments or CDs or some types of things like that to generate some sort of income for school districts, or maybe put some money into the Minnesota Liquid Asset Fund, which invests it for you and can generate some investment income that way.
I didn't realize that was available with the monies we had. So that's news to me. I thought that you were sort of hamstrung in terms of investment. And who determines a low risk fund? I mean, that's sort of a subjective term. Do you have to invest it through the Minnesota Liquid Asset Fund or whatever it is you just referenced?
I don't believe you have to invest in that fund. I believe that's all set up for school districts to invest in, to be able to generate some sort of investment income from dollars. There are probably some state statutes on how you can invest those dollars. You probably can't buy options and be very risky with some of that school district funds, but we would have to do some investigation as far as state statute on what those funds can be invested in. But we have other school districts that invest in bonds and CDs and things like that.
Okay, I mean, those were my two primary questions there. I'll give the mic up to somebody else. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Tim.
Are there any other questions for Luke while we have him here? Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. We appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yep, thank you. And if any other questions do come up, just have Crystal or Jeff reach out, and we'd love to answer them. But thanks again, guys, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Luke.
Okay. Next up is the superintendent elementary principal report.
Okay, I will make mine real quick here.
Hey, Jeff, can I interrupt 1 minute?
Yep, go ahead.
Just as long as the other question I had was, and I thought maybe you'd be a better person to answer it. Who determines our community ed financial commitment? I mean, how do we just decide that we want to throw $100,000 at it, or $50,000 a year, whatever the number is? How do we decide that budgeting item?
I think Crystal can answer that better than I can, but I think a big chunk of that transfer is from the pool levy.
Yes, that 174,000 was from the pool levy.
So, and that's one of our major expenses is the upkeep and maintenance and running the pool. But so it's a little deceiving how the community ed program is being run, because we do that transfer and you don't see that revenue come in on the community ed fund. It has to be transferred out of the general fund because that's how the school receives it.
Correct.
It's not like community ed's running amok and spending money all over the place. It's just the way it's just something we have to do every year, is that transfer, because we get that revenue from the local levy.
There is a specific percentage that the state expects us to contribute to the community ed situation, correct?
Crystal, I would have to explain how the pool levy set up. That's based, it's 100% levy, but it's based on all the expenses that we submit associated with the pool.
Correct. So you just take the difference between your revenues and expenses and you submit that to the state and they levy the difference.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Are we answering?
Yeah, in return, we get that. But when we get the levy money, it goes into the general fund originally, and then we have to transfer it out to put it into the 04 fund.
Okay. I'm getting the sense that I'm going down a rabbit hole I shouldn't, because it's over my head. But I may stop in there, Crystal, and just bug you for more questions at some point.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we can make that a bullet point next month's financial report. Information on the pool levy. Okay, any other questions? So my report's in the board packet, so I won't go into great detail. Enrollment for December We're up 3 students in the elementary, and the high school is steady at 208. Safe learning plan update. And this is kind of going into the district cabinet committee. I moved it down to my report. So Robin and Boyd, if you want to chime in on anything about our district cabinet committee, which met last Thursday, and we meet pretty much we've been meeting every other Thursday to discuss kind of where our COVID numbers are. And K-Shell reported at our meeting and this is based on last Thursday. The week ending December 5th, our county cases were at 22. And as of December 10th, there were 7 new cases. If you look today, I think we're up to 136. So that number is climbing. And I count on Kay to kind of filter through that. So she knows what new cases are. And she's been really spot on when we get that Thursday report from the state on that 14-day per 10,000 looking back rate. And last week we're at 68.26. And that we're going to see a big jump in that number this week and probably next week. Jill Olson was also presented at our meeting and shared information. I put it in the board packet, but I think I failed to get it in there in time. So I don't think you got it, but they're doing a promotion on masking and there's posters that we're putting up. And I emailed that out to the cabinet committee and I'll get that to the board. But we'll probably post that on our website and Facebook. Getting people that do a public announcement on why they're wearing a face mask. And who, sometimes they do who they're wearing it for. So pushing good face mask wearing and social distancing and some of those other mitigation things is kind of what the county's pushing at right now. Finally, I did present some information on some of the impact of COVID-related missed in-person days. And this is for the elementary, we've had 100 students so far out of 256 who've had to miss in-person school days due to COVID-related reasons. And if you, I think last month I reported that we had to change how we looked at some of the symptoms and be more restrictive because of the high rate of transmission in our county. So kids coming in with a cough or a fever that have to be sent home or not allowed to come to school. It's not always, they don't always get tested. Sometimes there's alternative diagnoses that they come up with. But anything that is such related to COVID that we send staff or students home is kind of what we're looking at. So total missed days in the elementary is about 667 days. And days missed per student ranges from 1 day to 15 days was the highest number. We've had 14 students had 10 to 15 missed days in the elementary. And when I say missed days, that means they're not in attendance, but they are able and strongly encouraged to use distance learning. And then we have a distance learning teacher, Diane Carlos, that connects with those kids and the classroom teacher. So there's not technically missed days, but it's missed opportunities to be in person, I guess is probably the better way. In the high school, we've had 98 out of 208 students who have had to miss in-person attendance at school due to COVID-related reasons. Total number of missed days is approximately 423. And we have to keep in mind, high school kids are in person every other day. So we're just counting the days that they missed the opportunity to be in person with their teachers is what we're measuring. And we have a maroon group and a gold group. The maroon group had 59 students who missed a combined 267 in-person days. Days missed per student ranged from 1 to 9 days. And our gold group had 39 students who have missed a combined 156 in-person days. And they ranged from 1 to 8 days. Staff, 45 out of 76.5 staff positions have missed work due to COVID-19. Total number of missed work days is approximately 272 and a half days. Days missed per staff member ranges from 1 to 15 days. And with staff, that could be children that have a symptom that they have to go home and that type of thing. As of the 11th, we've had 4 staff and 11 students who have tested positive. Out of the 15 positive cases among staff and students, 11 were on quarantine when they tested positive. We've had no known cases where transmission was traced back to the school. With the 2-week winter break, there are some concerns with possible more exposures and spread due to social gatherings or kids getting together and such as that. There have been some districts who have preemptively gone to distance learning for several weeks following their break. I feel that the best approach would be to continue to work closely with local public health to monitor our local case rates and make adjustments to our learning model based on the most current up-to-date data. So I'm recommending that we plan on coming back to school on January 4th with our current learning models, and that's the elementary in person, the high school in hybrid. Now, if something changes where local public health contacts me over the next 2 weeks and they say things are getting way out of hand and we have some cases tied back to school, obviously we might have to make some announcements and make an adjustment. And my plan would be having 2 to 3 days of, and we're allowed by the state to do this, of no school, have a transition day. So we could, within 2 or 3 days, have things in place where we could be all distance learning if we had to. But my hope is that we don't have that type of outbreak within our staff and students, and we can continue with what we've been providing for the near future. Also in my report, I put in some meetings, and I think later on we need to talk about our organizational meeting. And that's is that on the board agenda, I believe? So I'll just throw this out real quick. In the past, you try to do it the first Monday in January. And historically, we've done 7:30 in the morning, and we can set up via Zoom, and we can have the ITV room available as well. So my recommendation is to look at January 4th for the organizational meeting at 7:30 a.m. And that's about all I have for my report. Any questions on anything? I went over that really quick.
I do have a question. And maybe it should be addressed to Mary, but I think that you know too. Do you have many kids, elementary and high school, that have elected to just totally do distance learning?
Yes, and I had that data. I haven't updated it, and I don't know it off the top, but I can get that information. Yeah, we have a count of who chose to do it.
So, and then once they go to distance, can they come back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we're trying to avoid the flip-flopping back and forth. But we've been working very closely, and Mary can speak to this when she's up next. We do allow them to come back, but it's not whatever you want to do today and something different tomorrow. We've been trying to not let it get out of hand. Yep. You know, I've had a call today that there's a family that are bringing 2 elementary students back to in person after the break. So, yep.
That was just kind of a curiosity question.
Yep, and I do have that information. I just don't have it in front of me. I do have.
Well, I was thinking we had seen something before, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yep.
Have you seen more people go to distance learning throughout the year, or has it been?
I think it's been fairly steady. There's been a few that have recently gone out, but we've also seen some to come in. You know, it's kind of all, yeah.
Okay, anything else for Jeff? Okay, we will move on then to the high school principal report, Mary Merchant.
Good evening, everybody. Mid-quarter ended on December 9th and deficiencies were mailed out at the end of last week. So if they haven't been received, they should have. I will say I have concerns with the number of Ds or Fs that students had. Today I did highlighting and tomorrow I start making contacts with those families to see what we can do to help with support in that area for those students so we can get those up. I will say when we had quarter one, we were able to cut them in less than half by the end of quarter one. So hoping that we'll be able to do the same by making contact and helping. I will say teachers are great on still accepting assignments that are late and didn't get handed in. So, you know, the important thing is we want the kids to learn the skills and get the work completed. We do have an opportunity for a CNA class second semester and for our students in the building to take, and it won't interfere with any of their schedules. So it would be an additional class that they'd have the opportunity to take because it would start at 2:30. So we would use one of our classrooms and we'll bring in a bed. That was a big component for parts of the class, that to be able to have a hospital bed in the building for the kids to work with. And I do so far have one student signed up for that. Enormous thank you and gratitude to Jeff and Gretchen who met with the seniors and worked with them. We split into 3 groups and met with them one-on-one. And Jeff, I am just so grateful for the follow-up that you and Gretchen are doing with those kids. So went through, looked at what their plans are and then areas that they need help with. And Jeff and Gretchen have agreed to work with me and the kids throughout the school year, because when we get through our seniors, I want to move down to juniors in each grade level to really give the kids that support they need on how you do the career planning and what to look for and questions to ask. So I think it's been a wonderful experience for our kids, and it just wouldn't be able to get done without the extra manpower. So that's been terrific for them. Curriculum committee, I met on December 2nd to go over the changes with the art standards because now 2 areas of arts are going to be required for our 7th and 8th graders, and our recommendation going to the board, we already have a solution. It's wonderful. Our recommendation is going to be all 7th and 8th graders take band or choir, which is now the way it is. But the added component for the arts will come in theater, and Mrs. Smoller will cover that with our 8th graders, because 7th graders right now do have the fine arts with Mrs. Storbeck. So we will get the other component covered for our 8th graders with Mrs. Smoller, who already does cover theater, but she's just going to make sure that the art standards are all getting covered with the theater work she does with the kids. And then science standards is the next one we're going to tackle, because that has also changed with life science and physical science when it's going to be required. And we actually met today, did some groundwork with 6th grade teachers and then the high school science teachers. And then they are going to look at some different curriculums, and we're going to meet again on February 8th. So don't have any recommendations of how we're going to and when we're going to implement. Technically, they wanted part of it implemented this year. We have until 2023 to get it fully implemented. And then our December band and choir concerts are going to be recorded elementary and high school for Mrs. Tangy and Mrs. Nordine, the work that they've been doing. And Mr. Sather has been assisting on that, and hopefully we will have those ready to go. I think our goal is by Thursday to get those sent out and posted on our website, so we can still enjoy a holiday concert. And to me, they have gone above and beyond, because I anticipate the concerts, when everything is put together, to be at least an hour, hour and a half long. So they've done a phenomenal job how they've worked with these kids with distance learning, and the kids have recorded and submitted things. So really looking forward to that. I know I went fast, but I know we're going over over time here. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
I got a quick question, Mary. Does the CNA course, is that a credit course? You keep calling it a class. Do they get graduation credit for that?
Yes, they will be getting credit for that. Yes.
Ask again.
What age groups is that course for?
I'm sorry, please say that again.
The age groups for the CNA course?
They are allowing 9th graders to take it if it's in their schedules. So I want to say you have to be 15. And if you guys lose me, my battery's going low. I'm going to connect with my other computer. I'll rejoin the meeting. Sorry. I didn't bring my cord home with me. Any other questions?
We're good.
Thank you, Mary. Next up, then we have the business office report with Crystal Olson.
I just uploaded, well, Jeff uploaded the reports for me today into the finance committee file in the school board shared file, but we did discuss today at the finance committee as far as a more extensive report to be reported each month to kind of go along with the monthly budget report, to kind of more describe where the variances are. I'm working with Todd at Forecast 5 as far as developing a budget performance report as well that I hope to have for the January meeting that'll better describe some of that as well. But as far as this month, our November revenues were up approximately $80,000, which was a result of receiving our CRF funds. And then our expenditures were down approximately $60,000, which is a result of basically staffing changes between last year and this year and how we budget for them. So that's all I have. And then you got the audit report from Luke. So I think that's everything we pretty much discussed.
Thank you, Crystal. All right, next up on the agenda is Activities Director, Chad Hazelton. Chad, if you're there, you're muted.
Hello.
There we go.
So I really don't have a lot to talk about. We'll know more probably after Wednesday when Governor Walz is supposed to give us an update on youth athletics and everything else that goes along with that. Right now, our winter coaches are connecting virtually with the players that they anticipate playing. Workout ideas, playbook type stuff. Coach Sather's got weightlifting and stuff that they can do at home that he's sent out for them. So other than that, we've got games scheduled. We just need the clearance to be able to go ahead and start.
Any questions for Chad? All right, thank you, Chad. We'll move on. Next on the agenda is buildings and grounds with Seth.
I'm just gonna talk for him a little bit. So we did get the purchase, or we did put in the purchase order for the touchless hand sanitizers. So we will be receiving those. I'm not positive when, but we did order that. And then I think the school forest timber sale we discussed last month, correct?
Yeah.
So that's all he had for right now.
Thank you, Crystal. All right. Next on the agenda is community ed and transportation with Nicole.
Hey everyone. So we just finished up our driver's ed virtual classroom. with Mr. Denault. We had 31 participants in that, and that's really all that's going on with community ed right now. As for transportation, things have been going fairly well this year, knock on wood. We haven't had any major issues. We've had a lot less miles on our buses, and John and Dale, they've been working hard maintaining everything, and I think we have pretty good drivers that take care of our equipment. But we did have one of our Impalas cross its 12-year mark, so it's no longer available for students to ride in. So we're only down to 2 Type 3 vehicles, which are the Suburbans. But I guess that's all that's really going on right now, if there's any questions.
I would just like to say kudos to the parents this year so far that have been transporting their kids. That's been really helping a lot with keeping the bus capacity down, and so that's working really good. So appreciate the parents that are able and willing to do that. That helps us out a lot.
All right, thanks, Brent. And then next up on the agenda, we have food service with CC.
Hello. Danny had given you a couple of forms of the number of meals that Jackie has served and her girls for September, October, and November. Those are the total meals for the month. And then Jackie and I were talking, and we thought we'd put in what we served last year at the same time, just to kind of give you an idea of where she's at. They have done an absolute remarkable job with making meals and sending meals out. So that's about all we have.
Thank you, CC.
You're welcome.
Anything else for the working session? Doesn't sound like it, so we will adjourn at 7:23. And move right into our regular board meeting. We do have our truth and taxation.
Yep. Do you want to do that first or do the pledge? Probably do the hearing and then do the pledge being in the board meeting, or?
Okay, so we'll do the truth and taxation hearing.
Okay.
Right now.
Crystal, is it easier if I just make you co-host?
I don't have it on this computer though.
Okay, then I will.
Sorry.
Let me share my screen real quick here. Maybe I can do this one. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, you'll have to let me know when to change the slide here.
This will, well, I'll just kind of I'll just pause. It'll be short and sweet. There's not much to it, but anyways, so I'd just like to welcome you guys to the truth and taxation hearing for the 20-pay-21 levy. Per Minnesota statute 275.065 subdivision 3, school districts are required on an annual basis to present current year's budget, proposed tax levy, and then allow for public comment. The school district has 3 funds: general, community service, and debt service. We are currently utilizing the total revenue across all 3 funds is $8,588,441, and the total expenses are $8,619,891. And then at this time, we want to note that the general fund is balanced, but we will be looking at a revised budget due to COVID expenses. Basically, this is what the levy calendar looks like. Beginning in June, July time period is when the district is responsible to be reporting data to MDE. And then in August, we need to set the date and location for the TNT hearing. And that is usually held, it depends, either November or December, depending upon which dates they fall on. Then in September, we certify the proposed levy. November, we possibly have the TNT hearing and the county mails out the property tax statements. And then December now, we could possibly have the TNT hearing like we are as well. And then we certify that final tax levy. The levy components are divided among the 3 funds. The levy for pay 21 increased by $8,205.13 at a full levy of $1,964,376.90. And then tonight we are recommending that we certify and approve the pay 21 levy, which will be for FY22 budget year. And that's it. And just if there's any comments or anything, nothing's really changed. It's very minimal between the difference between last year and this year. So.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call the regular meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Now we will call the regular meeting to order at 7:28, and we'll stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
And
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Lyon.
Okay, motion by Ellis, second by Lyon. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Trask? Aye. Sandstrom?
Aye.
Okay, that was Lyon. Burcham?
aye.
And I'll call Robin again. We did miss you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said aye. Sorry if it didn't come through.
Thank you. All right, motion passes. Next, we're looking for approval of the consent agenda. On that is the approval of the minutes, approval of invoices and statements, personnel, appointment of Chad Hazelton to boys basketball varsity, Katie Piper, girls basketball varsity, Dale Rooney, girls basketball JV, Janelle Lowe's, girls basketball junior high, Gary Moeller, girls basketball junior high, Bruce Sindler, hockey assistant varsity.
I'll make a motion.
I think I heard Robin make a motion.
Yeah, sorry if you can't hear me.
Now we got you.
Okay.
I'll speak up.
I'll second that.
Bertram will second it.
Okay. Motion by Robin. I got a second by Bertram. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Trask? Aye. Sandstrom?
Aye.
Lyon?
Aye.
Bertram?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up on the agenda is board presenters. I don't have any. Written communications, no. Written communications, okay. No old business. And on to new business. We're looking for a motion to certify the final property tax levy.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second by Sonstegard. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Trask. Aye. Sonstegard.
Aye.
Lyon.
We may have lost him.
I don't see him on here anymore. I think we lost him.
You lose them?
Yeah. Bertram.
Aye.
Looks like Tim is off for the moment. We can move on without him. You want to try to get him?
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Tim?
I'm back. I don't know where I was, but I'm back.
Okay.
Did he get his vote?
Need your vote on certifying the final property tax levy.
Yep, I'm good with that. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Next on new business, we have, need to set the organizational meeting date and time. And currently we have a suggestion of January 4th at 7:30 a.m.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Robin,
I'll second that.
Second by Lance.
okay.
He can have it.
Was that a second by Lynn?
I don't know what.
Okay, we had a motion by Robin and a second by Ellis. We set the organizational meeting date and time for January 4th at 7:30 a.m. Any discussion? I'll call for a vote. Ellis? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Trask? Aye. Sonstegard?
Aye.
Lyon?
Aye.
Bertram?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we're looking to approve the final audit report year-end June 30th of 2020.
Motion by Ellis.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Trask? Aye. Sonstegard?
Aye.
Lyon?
Aye.
Bertram?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we're looking for a motion to approve the superintendent evaluation and growth plan.
Motion by Lyon.
Second by Bertram.
Motion by Lyon with a second by discussion. Thank you, Jeff, for your work this year.
Very appreciated.
I'll call for a vote. Ellis? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Trask, aye. Sonstagard,
Aye.
Lyon,
Aye.
Bertram.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we're looking for a motion to add the certified nursing assistant class to courses offered.
Motion by Ellis.
I'll second by Sonstagard.
Okay, motion by Ellis, a second by Sonstagard. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Trask. Aye. Sonstagard. Did you hear
I
aye?
think there was an aye.
Yes. Aye. I'm here. Yes.
Lyon.
Aye.
Bertram.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is to approve the reading and adoption of policies 405, Veterans Preference, 416, Drug and Alcohol Testing, 420, Students and Employees with Sexually Transmitted Infections and Diseases, and certain other communicable diseases and infectious conditions.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Bertram, second by Lyon. Any discussion?
Do we have any service dogs in the school?
Not at this time.
That's the next one.
What's that?
That was the next one. Oh, that's.
Not at this time.
As far as this question, sorry.
Okay. Anything else on those motions or on those policies? I'll call for a vote. Ellis. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Trask. Aye. Sorry. Sonstagard.
Aye.
Lyon.
Aye.
Bertram.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're looking for a motion to approve the first reading of policy 535, service animals in schools.
I'll make a motion.
Sonstagard.
Okay, Sonstagard,
Sorry. Yep.
I'll second.
second by Ellis. Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote. Ellis. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Trask. Aye. Sonstagard. I saw her mouth move.
Aye. I must need to yell. I don't know.
Lyon.
Aye.
Bertram.
Aye.
And we have the approval of contract agreement for professional services agreement with Northland Counseling Center.
I'll make a motion.
Sonstagard made a motion.
Mhm.
Motion by Sonstagard, looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Bertram. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Ellis. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Trask. Aye. Sonstagard.
Aye.
Lyon.
Aye.
Bertram.
Aye.
Motion passes. Any other business?
Do your recognition.
I'd just like to take a moment to recognize Jeff Bertram. This is his last official board meeting. And just thank you for your years of service to the board and And I miss working with you, but it sounds like you are going to be active in the school helping out students, so. I don't know if anybody has anything to add, but,
Thank you so much, Jeff, and I certainly appreciate your continued support of the school and the students.
You're welcome. I'm not going anywhere. Actually, I'm probably going to get more involved. So I just want to say it's been an honor to work with everybody that all have the same common denominator of making our school the best possible along with our students. So just thank you. It's been an honor. I cherish my time. I really do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been a pleasure to work with you and good to get to know you.
You bet. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Jeff. I think what you did for the board was really showed what an individual can do, but B, bought into the diversity that you brought to the board. So things that come out of individuals can be a real positive impact on the school. So thanks for being that diverse guy.
Thank you.
okay. Well, on that note, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 7:42. Thank you, everyone.